Good morning. Thank you all for being here. My name is Damian Graham. I'm the Communications Director for the City of Raleigh. I'm joined today by our City Manager, Ruffin, our Fire Chief, John McGrath, our Police Chief, Cassandra Deck-Brown, and our Director of Development Services, Tom Hosey. What we're going to do is we're going to start off with a statement from the City Manager, followed by our Fire Chief, who will give you more details about the events last night, and then all will be available for some questions for a few minutes. So with that, I'll introduce Ruffin Hall.
Good morning. Last night, approximately 10 p.m., we received a 911 call reporting a fire at the apartment building at the corner of West Jones Street and West North Streets. While there was considerable damage to the building and some of the surrounding area, we are fortunate and pleased to report that there were no life-threatening injuries. Before I ask Fire Chief John McGrath to share with you some of the specific details of our response, I want to take a moment to say a special thank you to the men and women of fire, police, and emergency communications. I also want to thank all of the outside partner agencies that assisted in the response. While a majority of our community was at home safely sleeping, our first responders were called into action, securing the area, evacuating buildings, working closely with Wake County EMS and our Red Cross to establish a shelter, and providing unrelenting efforts to extinguish the fire. I want to publicly state my true appreciation for their commitment, professionalism, and service. Moving forward, I pledge to you that our city staff is committed to working closely with our community and partners throughout the recovery period. I also want to take a moment to say a special thank you to our community. The City of Raleigh is a community that takes care of one another, and we appreciate everyone's cooperation and support through last night's long night and in the coming days. Now, let me introduce Raleigh Fire Chief John McGrath to provide more details of last night's event. Chief McGrath.
Good morning, everyone. At approximately 10:03 last night, an alarm was struck for the Raleigh Fire Department, and companies responded to 314 West Jones Street. Upon arrival, companies met a building under construction, heavily involved in fire. 5 alarms were quickly pulled, involving about 100 Raleigh firefighters, plus police and other emergency responders. The fire was brought under control approximately 3 hours later at 1:10 in the morning. Several other buildings were damaged due to radiant heat, and they are currently being assessed by the Inspections Department, the Fire Marshal's Office, for structural integrity, that we can try to get people back into their businesses and their homes as quickly as possible. The cause of fire, remains under investigation. We appreciate all of the emergency responders last night, and Red Cross is in the process of setting up a shelter for those people that are displaced. For those people needing assistance, they can call 919-231-1602, or they can go to the First Baptist Church at 99 North Salisbury Street here in downtown Raleigh to seek assistance. Also, in the Emergency Operating Center, we have set up a call center for people who have a question about when they will be able to get back into their business or their residence, and that number being provided and manned by city emergency workers is 919-996-2999. Crews remain on the scene, wetting down hot spots. I am here to answer any of the questions that you might have. No questions? Any questions? Please.
Well, I was going to say, Chief, have you considered this was stick-built, wood-built? I know there's been some controversy across the country about this.
Yes, ma'am.
What are your thoughts on that? And is the city considering maybe changing the way they do business?
Stick-built construction is going on around the country. As time goes on, new construction techniques evolve. All of these buildings had to pass a permit cycle where all the buildings were reviewed. That building in itself has already, while it's under construction, been inspected 50 times. They met with all code safety, life safety code, and building code requirements. Any building that's being built is vulnerable at some point, and unfortunately, this building is at the stage where it was extremely vulnerable. Before sprinkler systems got in, fire-resistant walls were put up. That would be any building. As far as the fire chief, no, this is the way it is, and just like some houses are made of brick and others are made of wood. Every house has an inherent danger in some part of its construction. Unfortunately, this building got caught at a very vulnerable time, but for me, no, there's no controversy with stick built.
Do you know when the last time it was inspected? It was recent?
Steve Berry, Monday, ma'am.
Any
No, ma'am.
flaws or-
No, ma'am, they were completely compliant with what they had to do as far as their permit.
Do you know how close this project was to getting the firewalls and sprinkler system installed?
Andrea, I do not know that at some point. I can tell you this, that I passed by there. They were putting sheet rock up. They were wrapping the building, but as far as the interior, I couldn't tell you at what point they were.
Any word on how many people were displaced and if the firefighters had to rescue anyone?
Pretty much firefighters arrived on scene, and the building itself was not occupied. The surrounding buildings, they self-evacuated. There were 5 people treated and released for smoke inhalation, and there was 1 minor injury.
Chief, to be clear about the firewalls, were they, as they built these floors, was the firewall going in?
They put them in normal construction. The firewalls will stop the fire, but also the sprinkler system is important. But at any given point, you don't have these things. That's why they're not issued a certificate of occupancy until all those safety issues are in. And once again, let me reiterate, any building that we build anywhere in the country is vulnerable at some point during construction.
But they were indeed required for this building to have
Oh, yes, sir.
firewalls and sprinkler system. Would a firewall hit, and we don't know what stage it's in, but is there any way under these kind of circumstances, in the midst of a construction project, that a firewall would make a huge difference, or do you feel like it would?
It's a holistic approach. The firewalls work with containing any incipient fire, along with the sprinkler systems. But at the point of construction, you cannot protect a building like that. It's just not possible in anywhere, or any building.
So sprinklers, active firewalls, none of that would have mattered anyway at this point in construction?
At this point of construction, no, they wouldn't have mattered.
Chief, any word on how much this will cost the city?
Ma'am, I would be taking a guess, and I wouldn't want to venture that guess. We don't know at this point. Ma'am.
I know this morning when we talked to Chief Fanning,
Yes, ma'am.
he said it was too hot to get in there. When do you expect to get in there and start looking for a cause?
It's under investigation right now. Interviews are being done. Companies over there are wetting down hotspots because the structural integrity of what was there has been compromised. We can't put companies in with hand lines. At one point, we will, to make sure all the fire is out, overhaul and begin the investigation. I would say that we'll probably be putting water on that building for the next 12 to 15 hours before we can actually get in there.
Isn't that a daunting task, an investigation, Chief, when a fire is so thoroughly burned? So I know investigators are good, but and also at a construction site, there's so many things that they could put, spontaneous combustion of solvents and glues, and we heard a roofer talking about them using glue, and they were working on the roof, and it was in there. How do you figure this out?
Believe it or not, there is a science, and we do it by a process of elimination from experience, education, and what the evidence will tell us. In conjunction with Raleigh Police and SBI Labs, we'll do a thorough investigation, but in the end, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, we can pretty much determine what caused that fire, but it will take a little bit because we need to be thorough.
Is there any indication, I know it's very early, but is there any indication that this was accidentally or intentionally set, like maybe it was a cold night and there were somebody in there who shouldn't have been in there?
We are starting to build our base of information, and it is under investigation.
Chief, when you have a fire this big and so many personnel there, what about the rest of the city? Were there any fire calls last night while this was going on?
Yes, there were. We work in conjunction with companies in the county. Just recently, we sent 3 companies to help the city of Garner while they were fighting a fire, and last night the county companies filtered in and covered the city for us so that we could protect the rest of the city. And we do this on a regular basis with agreements with all the companies around us.
Were there any serious fires or just was some fire? Do you have any idea what happened, what other things happened during?
There was a dwelling fire out on Barwell Road around 6 o'clock this morning, and companies responded and extinguished that fire, but there wasn't anything of significance other than this fire last night, except for this morning at 6 o'clock, and that was quickly extinguished and put under control.
Lastly, the wind. Just prior, our meteorologist talked about this last night. I mean, the wind really had been going for a couple of days, and it really just backed off yesterday evening. How do you feel about that?
I feel very fortunate that we didn't have the wind that we had just a couple days ago. Wind can cause a fire to spread more quickly than we can get ahead of it sometimes, but last night we were extremely fortunate, so we're grateful for that, for the weather.
Has the city of Raleigh ever seen a fire of this size?
Our historian told us this morning that a fire of this size has not been in this city since the 1920s. The biggest fire in my 11 years here is about 10 years ago off of Capitol Boulevard, Oneonta Drive. Once again, a windy March day, caught pine straw, caught a building, and before we get ahead of it, we've lost over a dozen dwellings. So, but this, according to our historian, is the largest fire since the 1920s in the city of Raleigh.
How do you measure that?
How do I measure?
How does the historian measure what the size of a fire?
I think it's the amount of response. This was a 5-alarm fire, which is significant, and I think that's how they measure it.
Chief, I know we asked you about other buildings that were damaged, and you've had inspectors go in. Do you have any idea when people will be able to go in to maybe retrieve their things? Because I saw a lot of apartments that had the windows blown out, probably have a lot of water damage. Do you know when they'll be able to go in?
I would like to get those people in as quickly as possible, but I don't want to put them in unless it's absolutely safe. We're working with the inspections department, our fire marshal's office. We have completed one of the buildings that we know that is structurally sound, but there's a lot of damage done to it because the sprinklers, the windows broke. The other buildings are being inspected as we speak. I would like to get them back in, that we can take people in to get their personal items within the next 4 to 5 hours.
Which one building has been found structurally safe?
The Quorum building,
Okay.
yes.
Can you describe in detail perhaps just what that's like for those surrounding buildings that suffered the smoke damage, sprinkler damage?
What it's like for the occupants or what it's
Yeah.
like for the buildings?
For the occupants, if they were to go back right now, what they would experience?
They're going to experience some water damage, possibly. They're going to experience possibly some smoke damage, but the integrity of their personal items should be intact. Their clothes might need to be laundered, but they should be able to get all their personal items so they can take them while the building is under repair.
Were any pets left behind when these folks were told to leave?
We have no reports of any pets or animals being left behind. No fatalities, one minor injury.
To a pet?
No, actually to a firefighter, minor injury.
Which brings me to two things. First of all, I guess it tells us how intense this fire is that it broke out windows across the street. Had there not been sprinklers in the Quorum, is it possible that building with those broken windows could have come?
I honestly believe that sprinklers are just a miracle worker, and I think the sprinklers had a direct effect because all the windows melted, and it's called safety glass. If you went over to Jones Street now, it's filled with the glass that was broken out from the Quorum building. But I definitely believe those sprinklers aided us in that fire not spreading even further than the original building.
What did firefighters do to prevent fire from spreading to other buildings?
We put water lines in between the fire and those other buildings.
Was that top priority, or did y'all focus on the main? Can you walk us through just
The-
like the thought process of?
The thought process is when we pulled up, that building was already out of control insofar as that we could not put companies inside with hand lines. That was, we went to a defensive mode. So the first thing you think of is do no further harm, cut the fire off. And that's what our companies did. They placed companies in between the fire and those buildings that were not involved, developed heavy water lines, and then after that, we then began to put water on the fire to extinguish it.
Chief, with the number of residential units and density increasing in downtown Raleigh, is there any talk or discussion about increasing firefighters and the number of firefighters and fire trucks that we have in the downtown area?
Ma'am, I can tell you that there is a rating system in the United States that rates every municipality, ISO, Insurance Services Organization, from 1 to 9. 9 meaning you have no fire protection, 1 you're the best. The City of Raleigh this year was rated, came back in after 5 years, and the City of Raleigh moved from a Class 3 city to a Class 1 city. With the density of population, we are meeting NFP, PA, National Fire Protection Association standards for response times and manpower.
But so as it increases though, are we gonna see an increase in the number of firefighters?
Uh,
Or maybe that's a Ruffin question.
No, I understand your question. To be honest with you, right now, no. When you look at a GIS map, we have in the downtown area where density of population we're starting to build up, we meet all the standards, and there's a redundancy in the Raleigh Fire Department. We don't send one engine or one ladder. We go early, we go big. So, no. Your answer to your question is no, it's not necessary. If I thought so, I would tell the city manager, but no, we meet everything that this fire chief is happy with. Sir?
Hey, how's it going? So tell me, how many wood frame buildings like the one that caught on fire last night are in downtown or Cameron Village or maybe North Hills?
I couldn't give you an answer, but there are a lot of them, and we're aware of them. But once again, these wood buildings meet the building code and the life safety code, meaning they're sprinklered and they meet national standards. And if they weren't safe, myself and Tom Hosey would say so. But they do meet standards, and any building could have a fire in it.
Just a couple more questions.
Is there a limit though, like once it goes over 5 stories, then it has to be steel beam construction?
Over 5 stories, it's got to meet the high-rise building code, ma'am.
And that's
Yes.
steel beam?
It involves a lot of factors. It's not just steel beam, it's fire-resistive towers, all kinds of different sprinkler systems have to go in if it becomes a high-rise.
And so this was what, 4 stories?
This was not a high-rise, this was under that requirement.
Let's go to Chris and then.
If I may, with a follow-up on, then, first of all, when you saw this last night, and I don't know how you saw it, it was in person, on TV, whatever, would you believe that we'd be standing here this morning saying basically 1 injury, no pets killed, no people hurt? Do you think this is the best outcome we could have?
This is a very good outcome. The only other better outcome is if we didn't have this fire. But the truth of it is, fires do occur. And the Raleigh Fire Department, along with all the other emergency responses, were able to do so, protect our citizens and protect our emergency responders. And I'm extremely grateful we only had 1 minor injury.
The crane falling. Were you guys there? How close was it? How dangerous was it? Did it fall in the right spot? Talk about the crane.
Our people were there. It did come down. It was extremely dangerous. And I am extremely grateful no one was injured or killed. It could have been a lot worse.
Did it fall in were we lucky the way it fell? I'm not sure.
We were lucky where it fell. We were lucky.
Oh, on power lines, what is the impact we're seeing with that right now?
Duke Energy is on location right now. They're cutting and isolating it and trying to get power back to those areas that have been affected.
Chief, what would you say to folks in Raleigh? Because this morning we were out there all morning, and we saw people coming down, gawkers, onlookers with their cameras, people walking dogs where the glass was. What would you say to the folks in Raleigh right now?
Right now, I would say that the area around the building is still unsafe. That's why we're cordoning it off. We are working diligently with all city departments to get that area opened up and to make it safe as we speak. And that while it is a curiosity, for the sake of their loved ones and themselves, they need to avoid the area.
Let's go last question for
Hey,
Chris.
so I have a 2-parter. 1, how many people are affected and in shelters? And then 2, this fire retardant walls, is it like a spray? Is it like in the drywall? And then also when are fire retardant type things like sprinklers, walls, when are they required to be installed in these buildings? When, like, as it progresses through the construction process?
Okay, first question. Give me it again.
Shelters.
Shelters. I have no information on that. Red Cross is in the process of setting them up.
So you don't know how many people are in there?
We do not. We're trying to get a handle on it as we speak, the number of people that are displaced. And as soon as we have that information, we'll try to get it out through our PIO. And your next question, when are sprinklers?
Yeah,
Like,
when in the process they get installed, and then also the fire, you were talking about these fire-resistant walls. Is it a spray? Is it like in the drywall? What is it?
It's drywall. Okay, a certain course of drywall will give you a 2-hour fire resistive, 1-hour fire resistive. To answer your question, when sprinklers are, that's in the building and life safety code. I could be here for 2 hours to tell you when. All I know is that we are compliant in this city with all the state mandated life safety and building codes, and we inspect them on a regular basis. So depending on the construction, depending on the size, is what triggers when a sprinkler is required.
So how about the building that burned down? When would the sprinklers and those types of things go in?
When?
Yeah.
They go in while they're doing construction.
All right, folks, thank you very much. We got a lot of work to do, so go ahead. Appreciate you coming out. We will provide information as it's available. Once again, the number for folks who may be displaced or have questions is 919-996-2999. So thank you all for being here.
Let me ask one question now. A lot of viewers have called and written wanting to know how they can help. Does the city have anything set up, or do you know of anybody who needs help? I mean, we've just had a lot of people saying, how can we help? We want to do a fundraiser. What can we do?
Any initial response to that?
Yeah.
Chief?
We have that number that we gave out, 996-2999, and we have a representative there from Red Cross. And if they want to help, usually cash is the best, because people's needs are varied, and cash is always to try to get them back on their feet. So they can call that number and they'll get further information on how they can help.
Or the Red Cross, is that the Dust Clearinghouse?
Red Cross is an excellent organization. They can contact Red Cross. They are an excellent organization helping our citizens.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.